Hi, everyone, and welcome to Pop Crime TV's The Outlier podcast. I am so excited. As you can see, I have the OG Kate Casey, comedian, author, podcaster, the host of the wildly popular podcast, Reality Life with Kate Casey. Her podcast features interviews with reality TV stars, directors, producers, celebrities, and just other talent from popular reality shows. And she knows exactly what to watch when it comes to documentaries, anything pop culture, and crime. So I'm so excited to have you, Kate. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So where are you located exactly?
I live in Southern California. I'm originally from Philly, but I have lived in California for quite a while.
Okay, got it. I wasn't sure. But there are so many things that I want to talk to you about. So many relevant things, I guess, right now. I mean, it's December. So for me in December, I get really sad because Brittany Murphy died on December 20th,
Mhm.
2009. And her death has left a void. I love her as an actress. I grew up watching her, but her death is really perplexing. I've done a few deep dives. I have interviewed her mother in law, Simon Monjack's mom,
Mm.
and I've tried to get in touch with her again, by the way, and I feel really bad. I don't know. I don't think I did anything, but she unfriended me on Facebook, and maybe she just wants to be done with all of this, which I totally
Well,
get.
did she see that her son was like a pathological liar? Does she see that?
She did. She did.
Yeah.
She said he had some issues. She definitely wasn't. I mean, I don't know about you. I have only son syndrome where like my son is a little asshole and I'm like, it's okay. But this is why men are assholes. Sorry, not all men, whatever. But, so she did have an element of that. But
Yeah.
I can't totally fault her for that. But she said a lot of weird stuff to me that gave me pause. I have the entire interview. I loaded it on YouTube a while ago. And then I also interviewed Dr. Cyril Wecht, who Brittany's late father had hired and paid to test her hair, among other things, because he believed something nefarious happened.
But
So,
from the testing, they thought that it was just the hair color, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
I never thought it was rat poison, but okay. But first, let me just hear your thoughts on the whole Brittany and Simon. I don't want to call it a thing. I mean, it sounds really insensitive, but I mean, it's suspicious. They died within 5 months of each other, by the same cause of death, which was pneumonia and anemia.
I think that she was an impressionable young woman. She clearly had issues from her father. She was very codependent with her mother. She was part of a brutal business, which required her to modify the way she looked, which I think really already does a number on your mental health.
Mm,
I think she had a history of getting swooped up into relationships and allowing those people, the person that she's in the relationship with, to dominate kind of not only the relationship, but she was impressionable.
yeah.
I am not surprised she would choose someone like Simon. I mean, there's evidence that the team that worked for her agents, her managers, all did not like him. He is somebody who sort of encapsulates to me the swindler of Hollywood. Like, he's always referred to as a screenwriter. I don't see any proof of that.
Yeah.
It's the only way he's branded himself. He had a history of lying. He isolated her. Seems to have had prescription medications in his name and other names. I think, he sort of isolated Brittany and her mother from the rest of the world. She was probably on a lot of medications. Already was in a compromised uh, health situation. She seemed to have malnutrition.
Mm,
So when you couple that with Lord knows what kind of medication she was on, low body weight, and then she probably got a mild flu that spiraled into pneumonia. The anemia would be a byproduct of the malnutrition.
mm.
So it doesn't surprise me that she did not make it. I mean, anybody that saw her on the red carpet for, weeks, years before that would have already been alarmed by how much her look had changed. You could tell that she was very fragile. And then he behaved in such a strange way after her death with her mother that
Yes.
I just assumed that he probably was in a weakened medical state as well. I think they were all probably on a ton of medications, and that's probably what happened. Sometimes I think, like
Mm.
in the world that we live in, where we have all these conspiracies, there are some times where I think the easiest answer probably is the answer.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I'm just going to pull this up. This is super bizarre. The weird photo shoot that Sharon Murphy and Simon Monjack had going on. I mean, I don't know what to make of some of this. And I get it. She's grieving her daughter, but
Yeah, but
the hands,
they had weird boundary issues already. The mother-daughter relationship was very strange. Now, by the way, if we ever had an interview with Brittany, I'm sure if we talked to her about
mm,
the experiences that she had as a young woman with her own family and in the entertainment industry, she already has had people probably cross boundaries with her. And then she and her mom refer to each other as soulmates. Like there's already some weird stuff going on. I do think sometimes we saw this in September 11th, where widowers sometimes create relationships because it's almost like they're trying to keep that person alive.
right,
And
right.
she looks to me like somebody who is just has totally lost her compass. And I think he had a history of just swindling people.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there's no doubt in my mind that Sharon Murphy was devastated by the loss of her daughter. Her daughter was her whole world. This is odd. It's a photo shoot. It's a Getty Images professional photo shoot of them looking sad. I don't know if I could necessarily have the balls to do that, as
Yeah.
a grieving parent. But yes, they were said to have been sleeping in the same bed together at times to comfort each other over Brittany's death. And then going back to what you said, uh, Brittany even did an interview at one point where she said her mom gave her alcohol when she was, I think, 10 years old to get up and sing in front of people at some karaoke bar. So, yeah, she had been groomed for a really, really long time. But what was interesting is also in the autopsy report, Brittany didn't have any prescription medication in her blood. It was all over the counter, cold medication. And what Dr. Cyril Wecht had said to me was this pneumonia could have easily been treated by a trip
Right.
to the doctor. So
Right.
why did her mother and her husband not take care of her?
Because I think that Simon was the controlling factor, and I
Mm,
think because he had all of these prescription medications, maybe she didn't have system in her system that day, but she
yeah,
probably had a history of it. He did not want them to be around doctors. The doctor could start asking questions. Okay, so
right,
what medication have you been taking lately? How long have you been sick? He did
right,
not trust them to be around anybody in a place of authority. That's why he cut them off from her lawyer and her manager.
right,
She couldn't even get jobs anymore because he was controlling. He would get in front and not allow her to talk to people. So
right,
it's not
right.
surprising to me that there were no prescription medications in her body at that moment,
Hmm.
because I'm sure that there was a history of it, but also it's not surprising to me that he wouldn't allow them to go to a doctor or talk to doctors, because he was probably becoming more and more paranoid, because the person that's providing for him money, really, it's not like he was in love with her. He was obsessed with her because she provided him money. And
Yeah,
that's why he's controlling in those pictures of Sharon. She looks like a deer in headlights, and he's controlling her because she's the way that he still has income.
right, right. No, that's a really good point. I mean, so I also interviewed a friend of Brittany's last year who did say that technically Brittany was sober and that was across the board. But yeah, like I'm with you in terms that her behavior, it seems like she is heavily medicated a lot of the time. And this friend also said that it was really eerie because Brittany and Simon used to hang out in the bathroom where they both were found dead, basically. But like Brittany used to go to the bathroom and read books and just have alone time, and then Simon would kind of follow her. And she said their friend group was pretty much like, okay, that's weird, but that's just them. They were seemingly obsessed with each other, but to your point, it was more like a control thing, which leads me
Yeah,
to
yeah. I don't
something
think
else.
I don't
Go
think she
ahead.
was obsessed with him. I think she had been groomed through her whole life to be in a position where a man who seemingly has some sort of authority could totally control over her life. She's in a bathroom, that's her way to escape, I'm sure.
Isn't that weird? It's so weird.
Mhm.
But then so
I don't
speaking of,
like everybody's rewriting history to make it seem like it was this love story. And it's like this was a girl who is in a precarious health situation, who was, at the cusp of something big, who
God,
became involved with a man who completely destroyed her career.
he did. Yeah. The last film set she was on, I think they kicked her off because he was there. And actually, there was reports that he was drunk on the set, acting erratically, and she didn't really do anything about it. But also, they said she was unprepared. She didn't know her lines, and that just
She
wasn't
was
like her.
probably on prescription medication.
Something, really something. And then additionally, this was he was part of the HBO Max documentary Harley Pasternak, he's a very
Yeah.
well-known celebrity trainer. There have been rumors that he practices mind control. There was a report, and this is from the 70s. There was a CIA agent with the last name of Pasternak who was part of this whole trial where they had to discuss mind control and what was going on within the CIA and what they were doing with it. So I'm not sure if people maybe got that confused with Harley, but I did look into it further, and he did study a form of psychology in Canada, which also could be known as mind control. So the fact that he trained Simon and Brittany, Mac Miller, Jessica Simpson, he reportedly sent those text messages to Kanye saying that, I don't know if you recall, he threatened
Hey, but
him and said,
let's go back for a second.
yeah,
Let's be honest. Do Simon Monjack and Brittany Murphy seem like anybody could have trained them? He probably met with them for 5 minutes. I don't
well,
think they were like real clients.
they actually, I mean, Harley said in the documentary he did train them, and Simon owed him. Previously, he had trained Simon when he was married to someone else. It was really weird. And that
Well,
Simon owed,
he may have had like lessons with her, training sessions with him, but I don't think it doesn't strike me that they ended up having significant time together. It was probably like we had a training session time at 10, you didn't show up, you owe me money.
it could totally, it could be that. Absolutely. So they did owe a lot of money. But I guess my point is here, I don't know if he's a personal trainer. I think he's a handler. That is my point, in the sense that
Mhm.
Jessica Simpson was acting out. She was an alcoholic at one point. You know, the tabloids were crazy with her. Obviously, Mac Miller had his own issues. He actually trained, I should put that in parentheses, Aaron Carter as well. So all of these people combined, I'm kind of like, man. And then Kanye releasing those texts, it's just like, yeah, is he a personal trainer or is this all a facade? And I know this sounds conspiratorial,
Mm.
but it's something to think about, because to your point, does Simon and Brittany look like they were, either of them were in good shape or a picture of health? No.
I know, but I live here and I can tell you that mm, so many people but like they get into the worst situations because they don't have their wits about them.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is like an isolated incident.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, people go with these big dreams and they are not prepared to do the hard work. They want to take shortcuts. They
Mm,
get in business with the wrong people. They don't follow through. It is really just a weird city and industry.
yeah.
When these stories happen, and it doesn't always shock me.
Yeah. And oh my gosh. And that's what's just so sad. I guess it's like, will we ever know, quote unquote, the truth? I don't know. And just to add one more thing to the dynamic of Sharon, Simon, and Brittany, aren't you always so curious about the mold aspect where it's like Simon and Brittany would fall ill, but Sharon lived in the same house as them. And they were saying, oh, it could have been the mold spores. Well, how? If this woman's in her 60s and it
I
didn't
don't
affect
think
her, I mean, we're not doctors,
I
but
I bet she wasn't on the prescription medications. Who's the contributing factor here? It's Simon.
right. Simon, right. Great point. And then with that, I want to play you brought this up, Brittany's last interview, which was December 1st, 2009. And then
Okay.
Brittany was found deceased December 20th, 2009. And yeah, I mean, it's really sad. If I recall, Brittany talks about wanting kids or something like that in this interview. It's totally
Hello, how are
heartbreaking.
you?
Tell me about your character June in the movie.
June is definitely in the middle of a love triangle, to say the least.
Oh,
And how was it filming such a dark thriller?
I was very drawn to this because of its noir quality and the short film that was made before we were able to make the full length feature. I was excited to be a part of the full length. I really enjoyed the short film very much.
And it was filmed on the same lot as Psycho. How was that? How did that come into play? Did anything eerie happen?
Not that I can recall at all. We had a very tight work schedule, and everyone.
17 days. Tell me about
It was very quick, so we just were professional and worked quickly and efficiently, and thank goodness everyone was kind. No one generally tends to be on a set that's an independent film. That has a short schedule unless they really want to be. And
What? And why do you think June?
everyone wanted to be there, and that was a pleasure.
And why did June? Do you think June ultimately cheated?
By the way, Phantom of the Opera was filmed in the exact same studio, which is no longer there. It was the
Wait.
oldest on the Universal lot.
I heard
And
this was the last production.
Lost in the fire. Very sad. It was so beautiful, my goodness. And that ambience, of course, fed into a film such as this. I'm sorry, you were asking me about June.
Yeah. Why do you think she ultimately cheated?
I don't know June's actual reasons for cheating. I'm very different from June.
Yeah.
I'm very, very
And
different.
really quick, last question: Is it easier? Do you find it easier to film comedies or thrillers? What comes more naturally to you?
Oh Lord, it for me. I've had the good fortune of being able to play characters that are stuck in the middle of comedic situations, comedic stories, ridiculous,
You could do it all.
or tragic, and it all has to do with the story and the director, and that's really where the decisions are made on my behalf.
You are gorgeous. Thank you,
You
so much.
are.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Can I have your hair in my next life?
oh my gosh.
Oh my god, are you kidding me?
I mean, God, you're right. Heavily medicated.
Mhm.
She's like Patsy Ramsey. I mean, I'm speechless. I don't think I've ever watched that from start to finish, and it makes me want to cry. What is your reaction to that?
I think she was, like I said, like under the control of a man who dictated what medication she probably took. I think you grow up in a business where people tell you you have to modify the way you look. She was at a compromised state because she probably wasn't eating enough. She was really struggling. And I don't think this
God.
is a totally unusual story, unfortunately.
I I mean, I'm comparing this to I think what I just recently watched, and I'll just play a minute of this, but just to give you an idea of what she was like. This was 2005. So 4 years before. Look at how her body language, her energy level, everything she embodies here is the complete opposite of what we just saw. I'll just play a quick 30 seconds so you can just see how wonderful and vivacious she was here.
I did too. Yeah, and that's what I thought you were doing.
Me too.
And you went
But
unbelievable.
I was
unbelievable.
Yeah. You were unbelievable.
No, I didn't know.
You look great.
Thank you.
You look
You
great.
look great.
Yeah, you do.
I'm having hair envy.
I was going to say, the last time you were here, it was blonde and short.
It was.
Is that all your hair?
It is right now.
I own it. All right, so let me. We're going to clear the thing up. I don't know if everybody really understands, because it sounds rude that I have you on the show and then I call you a liar. We're going to clear it up later on.
It does sound a bit rude.
Yes. Well, and normally,
Okay, you get it. That was just that was my point. I mean,
Yeah.
so sad. So sad.
Mhm.
I don't even know what else to say, but I mean,
Also, the entertainment industry is a very complicated place, and it's really hard for people to be successful in it. The conditions during that period of time and what was asked of women and their bodies. And if you are a person who has a parent in her life like her mother who had maybe pushed her to have a belief in people who don't have the best intentions, you have to be your own advocate ultimately. And
yeah.
I think it's a cautionary tale. I think it's a really sad story because she had immense talent. But in the end, I think it is probably exactly as what it seems. And I think Simon was the problem.
Yeah. I guess I don't see how anybody could say that she wasn't medicated. That last interview,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I don't understand now. I mean, her friend said, yeah, they're sober, but clearly that's not sober. I mean, could it be, she took a Benadryl? I don't even know. Who knows? But it's baffling. And again, this is just not the Brittany Murphy that we knew at one point. But Kate, not to put you on the spot, but do you have a favorite documentary or show that you find to be the most factual and maybe deep dive into Brittany's life?
Well, there was one on HBO that I thought was really well done. I think it's called What Happened to Brittany Murphy. And I think that they kind of spell it out really well. And I don't think this is a totally unusual story. And there are people who have big dreams, they come and they get swept up with the wrong person. And it's just a very difficult, brutal business.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, let's move on because I have a lot of questions about well, not necessarily about the case. The case is wild, but I am not a huge reality TV watcher. I do participate in watching Love is Blind because it's
Okay.
amazing. Because it's amazing and who wouldn't? But The Bachelor, before we get into this, what are your thoughts about Clayton Echard in general, his persona, his personality? I know what I've read online, but what do you think?
I watched the season. I had a good time kind of making fun of the season. He just seemed like a goofy guy, but not totally dissimilar to other leads where, they go with the best intentions. But when you have 20 women who are beautiful and they're all kind of curating their personalities to fit the kind of person that you want, I think, you kind of like lose your way a bit. So in the end, it didn't work for him, which was not a big shocker. But, for the moment that he was on TV, I think he kind of fit a great box. I think they do the best when they have someone who's like a football player, all American guy from the Midwest. He kind of fit a lot of those boxes. But I wouldn't say it was like the most entertaining season, but a season nonetheless.
It was watchable.
Yeah.
Okay. I read a few reports online that people thought that he was I guess that he slept around a little bit.
By the way, I'm sure they all do.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you have all of these women on the show who are desperately trying to stay on the show as long as possible. And they'll, kind of play into the game. And it's the same, conversely, when they're a bachelorette lead. And it's the kind of game they play because they all really just want to have a career in entertainment. So, I mean, if you don't realize that watching, I can't help you. But I mean, I think they all kind of like are players, and then they go off the show, and then all of these women like are interested in them, and Listen, if you're a 20-year-old guy and you may have played a sport, but you certainly weren't at a place where you had that level of fame, I think that can be very daunting. Much like Brittany Murphy, who she became famous when she was so young, I do think that there is something that happens when someone becomes really famous and they kind of like lose their bearings. They need to calibrate from the real world again.
Mm,
So listen, a bachelorette or a bachelor lead who maybe hooked up with a bunch of people, not very shocking.
right, right. Absolutely. I agree with you. I This case is disturbing, and at this point, it was early November that Maricopa County had said, we don't know if we are going to press charges or file charges against Laura Owens, because in June of 2024, and just to go back a little bit, I realize that not everybody knows what I'm talking about. A woman named Laura Owens had essentially sued Clayton Echard for child support and in saying that she was pregnant with twins, and they were his twins, and it was a whole mess. And then she revoked that and said that she had a miscarriage, essentially. And he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he takes her to court and he's like, well, then you need to pay for all of this shit that I've just dealt with, lawyer fees, DNA testing, all this stuff. And not
Good for
only
her.
that,
Good
yeah,
for her.
he said, we never even had sex. And she said, oh, he was just so intoxicated that he didn't know. I'm kind of like, what? I mean, that's ridiculous. But I wasn't there, but a judge did rule in his favor, saying that, nope, this shows that she was never pregnant. I mean, you have to go through these court docs, Kate. I have them here, but she didn't go to these appointments, these pregnancy appointments, and she says it's because she was so hurt that she had to go alone. So she canceled them. You're a mom, I'm a mom. You can't, when you're pregnant, you can't just cancel these early appointments, right? Like you need to,
Yeah.
yeah, they're pretty important. So this whole thing it's crazy. And what I am finding to be so interesting about this is that Laura Owens, she actually created this Medium account now, and I'll share this with you, where I mean, they
Wow.
figured out that her ultrasound was from a YouTube video or something, but she
Oh,
had these
wow.
pictures where she had like a bloated stomach at one point, and then she goes on to say that because of the online criticism she's faced, she now weighs 85 pounds. And that's sad. I mean, bullying online is horrible, but this is wild because her Medium blog here, and I'm just going up, it essentially, I feel like it's a bit of, I don't know, not an excuse, but this is September of 2024. She basically announces that she has autism. And I think this is her way of saying, this is why I did what I did. But she's also really going into detail about and doubling down on these claims that she was pregnant. But according to Clayton, they only had oral sex. So it's crazy. But now she could be charged with perjury, among a few other things, and they don't know. Maricopa County, they don't know. They have not made a decision as to what they're going to do. But it's the whole thing is just, God, it's wild. And he has a whole army behind him, which is great. But also, I just, I hate the online bullying thing. I really do. So I don't know. Did you
I don't know.
hear about this in
I
real
did.
time? Okay.
I did. I stand with Clayton.
Mm,
And if you don't want bullies, well, then maybe you should think about the course of action you took.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like he is right in this situation. Like
Yeah.
he is, everything was fabricated. And not only that, but it sounds like she had set up this real estate thing in order to have an excuse to talk to him in the first place. And she's cute. Obviously, if she lays it on, I don't expect anything less than him going over to her house and hooking up with her. But I mean, the whole thing, it's just, God, it's taken up so many resources. I mean, so much time.
Well, isn't this like the back end of, you sign up for a show, and I think that a lot of people think it's quite glamorous, and it seems like an escalator to success. All of a
Yeah.
sudden you're on a show, you get all these followers. The truth is there is a very dark underbelly to it. And again, you have to have a very thick skin, and you have to have a game plan. You have to have a good team around you that have your best interest. And it's just like, if you have one of those missing pieces, it's very easy for somebody to meet the wrong person or to get screwed over.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because in her Medium articles, she actually she shares Clayton with her attorney. And I'll pull this up. I don't know if you've seen this. Have you seen this? Where the attorney is asking Clayton about the pregnancy test. And I find him to be super confident and super truthful in this. I'll just have you watch just a second of it. Yeah, to get your reaction here.
Did you ask my client to come to your house under false pretenses?
I told her to come over so that I could talk to her.
And was that your actual intentions, for her to come over so that the two of you could engage in conversation?
That was part of it, yes.
Did you recently state during your podcast that the real reason you asked her to come over was so that you could have her conduct a pregnancy test of your own?
That was the other part of it.
In front of you, presumably?
Yes, although she would not pee in front of me, but yes.
Understood. And did you purchase that pregnancy test?
I did.
And
let's call it an ACG test because we know that she was never pregnant.
Well, on the box, did it indicate that it was a pregnancy test?
Sure, I guess that's what they market it as for people that are actually truthful and take these tests and don't lie.
Okay. So you purchased this pregnancy test. Did you tell my client prior to her arriving at your house that you were going to ask her to perform the pregnancy test?
No.
And when you showed her or asked her about the pregnancy test, what was her response?
That she had already taken one and she brought one with her so that I could see it.
Nope.
The test is false.
And did you insist that she use the test that you had purchased?
Yes.
And did she in fact go through with conducting that test?
Yes.
And if I recall correctly, you took some measures to ensure that she was not taking anything into the bathroom with her. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yes, I wanted to make sure she didn't bring anything in, but she couldn't pee in front of me because she said she had stage fright. So I closed the door so that she'd be able to pee.
And when you say you made sure there was nothing on her, can you explain to us what you mean by that?
Yeah, she didn't bring any bags in the room. I didn't feel like I saw anything in her pockets. It's not to say she didn't have something possibly pushed up inside of her. I didn't check that.
Oh, God.
But she wasn't carrying anything into the bathroom.
Okay. And she did perform the pregnancy test. Did she show you the results?
Form foundation.
Yeah, I saw the test.
And what were the results of the test?
There was
Foundation.
one line and one faint one.
So there were two lines. One was more faint than the other.
Yes.
And at this point, did you believe that she was pregnant?
I had a moment of disbelief. But yeah, at that moment, I thought maybe she had actually successfully trapped me by inseminating herself. That was my belief.
The next day, do you recall sending my client a text message?
Yeah.
And did that text message state that you were going to give her a chance?
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
Well, she had said that she wouldn't have an abortion unless I dated her. So at this point, I had no reason to be truthful with her. I told her I'd give her a chance so that I could try to find a way to potentially end the situation.
So when you say give her a chance, you're referring to, if I'm understanding correctly, you would give her a chance with regards to the two of you having a relationship.
Yes, it was a lie. I had no intention of dating her, but I was going to just basically tell her what she wanted to hear to see if she'd go away.
And what you mean by that is to see if she would move forward with an abortion. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in fact, after this pregnancy test, isn't it true that you informed my client that you not only wanted her to get an abortion, but if she didn't, that she would have to raise the child 100% by herself, and that you would not be involved, or the child would be left for adoption?
You're missing a ton of context. Yeah, if you want to try to parse it together that way. There's so much missing context with what you just, the sentence you just formed.
Did you send my client a text that said what I just said?
It was over the course of many texts, after she'd threatened me multiple times.
Sir, I'm showing you. Actually, can you please turn in your book to what's marked as Exhibit 3?
I mean, we can stop there. There's nothing too much more. But I mean, I guess, how does one? Sure, maybe she had it lodged. I don't know. How was she able to get that faint line? I mean, it was proven she was never pregnant. How did she get that line?
I don't know. Desperate people use drastic measures. I don't know. She seems to be a very unreliable person.
Yeah.
And I have to say, he comes across as very trustworthy.
I agree. I felt the same way. He was honest he's like, yeah, I said this. I lied to her because that was the only way to move forward with my life. But as you can see, this was a lot of time, a lot of resources for him. And it's clearly caused a lot of turmoil in his life. But yeah, in regards to Laura, I hope she gets counseling or therapy or whatever it is that might help her with whatever's going on, because this behavior is I mean, I don't, again, I'm not a doctor, but it's mental. It's really, to fake this and to go to the extent to not only say you're pregnant, but to say twins. I mean, that's like, yeah.
It's very dark, but I'm sorry for the mental anguish that he clearly has gone through. But it sounds to me like the court system will look to see everything in his favor, and for that I'm grateful.
Do you think this is one of the biggest Bachelor scandals?
Well, not really, because it was off the show. It was well after the show, so a lot of people aren't even aware of it, or they don't. When these shows work, it's like once someone goes off the air, you really forget about them, and that's true of every reality show. You're really only as good as you are when the show's airing, and that, I think, adds another component of pressure for people. Is like, I need to make the most of this, strike the iron while it's hot. And I think if you have been somebody who's trying to be an actor for a long period of time and it hasn't been working, and this is the thing that's going to stick, or maybe this is your first try at becoming famous, and you've got people that are telling you got to do certain things, it really is a maddening sort of situation for people.
Yeah, right. What do you think was the biggest, I guess, Bachelor scandal, which could be on screen or off? What really sticks out to you?
I mean, honestly, I think a scandal was like when Ari Lewandowski decided that he didn't want to marry Becca and he wanted to go back to the runner-up and tell her that he was in love with her. That, I think, was really big deal at the time, because the audience, every week they were becoming attached to this idea of him proposing to one girl, and the idea. But Jason Mesnick did the same thing. He went to the runner-up. I think those are more the scandals because it's happening in real time on the show. But once it's off the show, people really don't care.
It's funny. Someone actually told me about this, and I was more interested just because I love following the court documents and the motions, because I just feel like there's so much information there that, you can't really get through just random news articles. So that's why I was really drawn to this. And I was like, oh my gosh, I get to ask Kate about, you're an expert on these people and these reality shows. So I was just very excited to tie this all together. But
in that case too, it's like, this is clearly a person I'm talking about her.
Yeah.
It's like she wants to be famous at all costs.
Yeah, that seems to be something. You're right about that. And I think she had a podcast as well. I don't think it was super big, but she and then again decided she wanted to do something in real estate, which I believe was really to get his attention, Clayton's attention. So you're
Yeah.
right. Maybe, but like God, why would you do it this way? Why, how do you not see that people are going to rally behind him? And it's just like, it's so weird.
Because I think people lose their whole sense of reality. I mean, I make a joke. There are many of us who maybe at a period of time have had imposter syndrome, where you're like, "Am I right for this?"
Mm,
Reality stars have what I call celebrity syndrome, which is they have believed themselves to always be a celebrity, and they will make that happen in any way possible.
yep.
And it
Wow.
is kind of like a loss of reality.
You're so
And some
right.
people are delusional, some people are delusional and diabolical.
You're so right about that. And it's funny because when these Love is Blind seasons drop, I'm like, oh my gosh, I really want to get an interview. And then I think back and like there's such hot commodities at the moment, and their
Yeah.
publicists are like fielding all these people. They think they're hot shit. And now I'm just like, yeah, man, I don't think I would ever interview
Well, because
anyone again.
once it's off the air, no one
Yeah.
cares.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But
Exactly.
then think about that, like they're the people in their corner, maybe they've already hired a publicist. They're like, you've got a 2-week window. You better maximize it.
So
And
true.
that makes somebody crazy in the head.
Yeah, you're so right. You're so right about that. My gosh.
Because these are not like jobs like everybody else where, you go in and you have the application and then you have the interview and then,
Yeah.
you go every day and you meet with an executive team and you have investors and you're an account director. I mean, this is like a whole other ball game, and not everybody has the wherewithal to withstand it.
I mean, I'm sure you picked up on this, but the last season of Love is Blind, when they dropped it in October, I was just really annoyed that all of a sudden in all of the seasons, they don't talk anything relating to politics. And all of a sudden, it's gotten totally political ahead of the election. And I'm just like, you bastards. I go here to
Yeah.
not, hear about politics. And I got to hear this guy up there being like, I identify as white and I'm so ashamed of, and I'm just like, I don't care.
Also,
Like,
I don't know if you could make Love is Blind in DC and not acknowledge it to some degree, because
oh,
there is going to be somebody on the cast who has had some career position, or not a high ranking position, but like
mhm,
invariably somebody has had a job. Like I went to school in DC. I worked on political campaigns. I worked at the White House.
yeah.
You can't have a discussion about people who live in DC without that being touched. Much like you can't have a show about New York and not talk about financial services. You can't have a show about LA and not talk about entertainment.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I remember that. I think it was some of the women were possibly lawyers or in law school or something like that. Maybe something having to do with being a lobbyist. I'm not sure, but that's a good point. I guess it was DC, but I was more like, okay, the election's a month away, and they're really trying to, drive all of this political discussions, in the
I
show.
think actually it's the opposite, Lauren. I don't think they wanted to talk about politics as much as they could. I think they kind of dipped in and out as much as they could, because what they really want is everyone to fall in love with all of these couples and all of these characters. And the minute you add in politics, you've dropped off 50% of the audience.
Yeah, that was just so weird because I was one of those people that was like, "Oh, please
I
stop."
know, but then also you're going to make a show. They've had several seasons. They're going to have more seasons to come. They want to go to different parts of the country and have different kinds of audiences. Of course, they
Yeah,
start off with New York and LA, but you're going to get people who want to be entertainers. That's
yeah,
why Love is Blind, when it was in Charlotte, was so great, because you have people that have different kinds of businesses and they seem a little bit more authentic and real and willing to open themselves up, but also be interested in a long and lasting relationship, because they are not in a place in the country where youth is attached to the success that you have in your career.
right. No, that's a great point. I wonder what the next city will be. Did they do
It's
Boston?
Minneapolis. It's
Oh,
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis. Oh, okay. That's interesting. I don't know much about Minneapolis, but that's cool.
But that's the great thing too. The fact that you
Yeah.
said that is even great because that makes people want to go, all right. For me, I think the best part of unscripted TV, which is reality shows, documentaries, docuseries, is that you get the experience of being a voyeur into somebody else's life. And when you do that, really you begin to realize that you have more in common than you think with somebody. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Like there was a great show, well, for a couple seasons. There was a show on Bravo called Shaws of Sunset.
Mhm.
And they had this one season where the cast members all had relatives who had fled Iran. And they went to the border of Turkey and they talked about what it was like to grow up in families where they heard all the time about their relatives having to flee this country and create a new life in a new country. Now, for a lot of the people that watch that show, they may have been completely unfamiliar with the story of the revolution in Iran. Maybe they've never met anybody who is Iranian. And
Mhm.
suddenly, now you're thinking of that person as your own friend because they've been intimate with you in terms of like their emotional experience,
Yeah.
and it shifts the way people think.
Mm.
Like, okay, now I can put a face with a population of people, with a culture, and it also makes you realize, okay, that person's family comes from a different part of the country. They want the same things I do. They want family, they want love, they want connection, they want to be successful. And I think that's the blessing of all reality television shows. So for everybody who goes, reality TV shows are a waste of brain cells. They're stupid people watch them. I couldn't agree with or disagree with you more. In my experience, the smartest people watch reality television shows because it is a study of human behavior. And the more we study human behavior, we have a better understanding of other people and ourselves.
I mean, you made me want to go watch Shaws of Sunset. I think is it on Netflix now? I feel like the
Yeah,
reruns
you
are
could
on
probably
Netflix.
go watch it on Peacock. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you made me want to go watch
But if you
it.
want to watch that, I would challenge you first to watch the HBO documentary called Hostages.
Okay.
And that is 3 episodes, and it talks about the Americans in the embassy in Iran during the revolution in Iran, and it really paints a broader scope picture of
Mm.
how Iran changed since the 1970s and how it affects the geopolitical climate today. And I
Oh,
think it's really kind of a great snapshot into our world in the 70s and what it is now in the aftermath. So if you want to kind of
interesting.
delve into Middle East stuff, I recommend Hostages on HBO, which is excellent. But honestly,
Okay.
it anybody can come to me for any topic. You want sports, you want archaeology, you want politics, I'll
Yeah.
tell you what to watch. But I really I do believe that unscripted is just the best place to get real stories. Listen, you could watch, This Is Us, and then, the seasons are over, but they're not real people. They're not real stories. Real people, real stories. You want to be inspired, watch 100-Foot Wave on HBO about Garrett McNamara, who rode the first big wave, like an 80-foot wave. You
Yeah.
want sports, watch Quarterback on Netflix and really understand what goes into being a quarterback, the mental pressure, the physical pressure, the financial pressure. It's all there. And we're in a time right now where streaming networks are giving us so much content.
Yeah.
And I just think there's so much out there to watch.
Yeah, there's a lot to choose from, and something that my husband and I actually agree on, because I always want to watch crime documentaries or crime shows, and he wants to watch sports or, whatever. We love Untold on Netflix. I mean,
Untold's great.
it's so good.
Yes, I interview the Way brothers. I interview them
Yeah.
about all their episodes. So if you want to get more behind the scenes, I go back and I interview them. They have a new doc, not Untold, but it's a true crime one that's coming out next week. You can watch The Kings of Tupelo.
Oh,
That's good.
wow.
Have you ever watched Murder on Middle Beach?
No.
That was in 2010. It's a true crime docuseries. It's about 3 episodes. It's on HBO. Madison Hamburg's mother was murdered and found outside of her home. And over the course of the series, he's older now and he's going back and looking at his mom's life and trying to figure out who it may be. And that may include somebody in his own family.
Wow. Is there a conclusion as to who did it at the end? I need to know.
You have to go and watch the whole thing.
Oh, am I going to be
Yeah.
satisfied? Just tell me this. Will I be satisfied regardless of the conclusion?
I think in that one, complicated family dynamics
Mm.
are enough to keep you really satisfied.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What was the name of that again?
Murder on Middle Beach.
Okay. Murder on Middle Beach. All right. Well, that's
Although
on my list.
there's one that came out last week on Oxygen where there is an ending that you might like. It's called The Lady of the Dunes. And it was a 48-year-old unsolved mystery of a woman that was found murdered in Cape Cod. And they finally found out who the killer was because of genetic genealogy. And in
Wow.
the process, found out the guy was a serial killer.
Oh my gosh. That sounds so interesting.
Yeah, The Lady at the Dunes.
Wow. Okay. That's okay. This is really helpful. Thank you. Well, I also want to discuss just, lastly here, there's a few documentaries, I guess, that are in the works right now about Sean Combs. I mean,
Oh yeah.
TMZ put something out. Did you watch the TMZ special about Diddy?
Yes. Now, I first want to say this. What's interesting about Diddy is that because he really became famous in the early aughts, we have been able to see him in several forms of media, but a lot of us became kind of fascinated by him because of reality shows.
Yes.
You know, you want to be P. Diddy's assistant or the making of the band. So he has been part of pop culture, the vernacular for a long time. So now to see where it's come with an audience that has become increasingly more interested in true crime, it's
Yeah.
been kind of an interesting thing as an outsider. I've had a lot of experts on my show. I've had a retired member of Homeland Security who did raids, who
Mhm.
talked about what they would look for in the raids. I've had an attorney who talks about his legal situation moving forward. I think this is just scratching the surface of things.
Mm.
Ultimately, I think he's somebody who obviously does not believe that the law applies to him. The fact that it's been, 3 rounds now and he's trying to get bail, I think it's really painting a very dark picture of the entertainment industry, which is, I think, where we began with this Brittany Murphy discussion is that if you are somebody who doesn't have a strong sense of self, doesn't have a good team around you, it would be very easy to get into the hands of somebody who has ulterior motives.
Mm.
And even the documentaries about child stars, I think there's been a really great awakening. These things kind of move in waves, and I think that there has been a revelation, for lack of a better term, for a lot of specifically parents of children that are trying to get into the entertainment industry. You have to ensure that this is a child, this is a young person who really has the tenacity to work in a system that is filled with rejection,
Yeah.
and also that they have protection. They are surrounded by people who have their best emotional, legal, and business interests. And I
Right.
think as this story plays out, this will become even more apparent.
I mean, I just feel so bad that Aubrey O'Day has been essentially trying to tell us this for years and years and years. And I'll be honest, I don't know if it's just because of her, how she's sort of evolved into the lips, all of the plastic surgery, where I kind of just was like, okay, whatever. And that's horrible. I'm admitting it. It's horrible that I sort of just was like, I'm not super interested in her because I really liked her on Making the Band when she was innocent and she was sweet and she was, coming onto the scene as this wide-eyed girl.
I
And
know, but she's then working in a system where you have to modify. It's the same as Brittany Murphy. She's being told, you're not right for this. You have to make yourself look this way. Also, I think for a lot of women, they are assaulted. And then there's this sense of like, I want to not be the version of myself that this has happened to. It's very complicated for victims. And I think that the R. Kelly documentary did a very good job of really showcasing how sad it is when the victim is not in the package that we would expect and how it can be dismissed. We have to listen to victims. We have to listen to victims, whether they were in a band and they have a certain look or not, it doesn't matter. We have to listen to victims.
yes. So what I was getting at was not necessarily that I didn't believe her because of the way she looked. It was more like she never came out and said directly, he did this to me, this happened to me. She just would make these comments about his control, right? The control he had over them, what he would try to make her do, the fact that they wouldn't always get paid. And then I was just referring to the evolution of just her seemingly not knowing when, quote unquote, to stop. And that is where I get like the whole lips, the face, whatever. But
Yeah.
to your point, that's really interesting and something to think about. Perhaps she, and she has not come out and said anything definitively, right? She hasn't stated that something happened to her in terms of Sean Combs assaulting her, but we could speculate that perhaps she was in these positions where he, tried to force her to do something. I don't know. I'm speculating. And you're right. Maybe she wanted to change her appearance and wanted to just not be that person that was in those situations because I don't know, maybe she didn't get therapy, maybe she didn't, come to terms with it. I don't know. But I feel bad that it's like she was on all of these podcasts hinting
Yeah.
at it and everybody was like, whatever,
It's
whatever.
like David versus the Goliath.
Yeah.
I
Right.
mean, look how retaliatory he has been. I can't imagine that would be easy for any victim of his, and I hope that they find their power.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know that I was so nervous this last bail request. I mean, it seemed like the fact that they were sending security to go look at this apartment, and I was like, wait a minute, are they getting some kind of signal that he actually might be granted bail here? Because why go through all of that? This seems crazy. And then thank goodness he was not. But that right there would just be so alarming for all of his accusers and anybody who has filed any type of lawsuit. I mean, it was terrifying. So I'm just happy that it seems like the judge right now is really taking this seriously. I mean, I don't see how he's going to evade anything at this point.
Well, it sounds to me like there has been evidence that he has been trying to talk to witnesses or at least have some sort of communication with them. So I don't see him receiving that in the near future. No.
No, and he's been so deceptive, not only just to the prosecution, but allegedly to his lawyers as well. And the judge made an accusation basically saying to the defense attorneys of Diddy, like, you can't control your client. You don't even know what he's doing. You don't even know if he's being truthful. So that was pretty crazy. And yeah, a really, really bad look. But Kate, just really quickly, while I have you before we sign off, what besides what you told me, what is new right now in the doc world that is a must watch?
Huh. New docs. Hmm. I mean, I am talking every week about what's new, so I'm trying to think of like maybe things that you haven't. Why don't you tell me a category and then I'll tell you what to watch? Like, are
Well,
you a sports person? Do you like historical docs? Do you
I like
like?
historical. I could do it. I mean, like I said, I'm huge on crime, but I need a break from that
Yeah.
sometimes. So historical, I'll take.
Well, let me ask you this: have you ever watched The Keepers on Netflix?
I've never seen that. I've never watched it. I
Well, this
know
is your
it.
homework. The
Okay.
Keepers is the story of Sister Kathy Sesnick, who was a Catholic nun in Baltimore. And she was a teacher at a school called Archbishop Keogh, and it was a women's Catholic high school. While she was there, she was a theater teacher and had a great relationship with the students. In 1969, she disappeared, and then 3 months later, they found her body. They believe now that she was likely a whistleblower because the priest at the church or at the school, as well as some other faculty members, seem to have been involved in a ring of assaulting young students and may have been working in conjunction with members of the police department.
Wow.
So it was
Wow.
a huge, huge story. And so the Keepers is a series where they have victims of this priest who were students at Archbishop Keough, as well as their classmates who have worked tirelessly in these last few decades to find out what happened to their beloved ex-teacher. And it really kind of shines a light on abuse in churches too. So it's called The Keepers, and it's one of the best docuseries I've ever seen.
I think this came out a few years ago. I think I know exactly what you're talking about. Like I can picture the thumbnail in my head and everything. I think I just never got around to watching it. But this sounds really interesting. Really good, really sad. But
Yeah.
wow.
But really important, I think, even in 2024, to kind
Yeah.
of look at it. Because what's interesting in that period of time, even listening to my own mom's story, is that priests during that time, to have a connection to a priest, your family priest, the church priest, it was almost an extension of your own power. So much like some of the stories that we've talked about already, is that how does someone get power? What does someone do with power? And then how does a victim get their power back?
Yeah. Wow. No, super powerful. So, yeah, no pun. Sorry. Well, thank you, Kate, for joining me. This has been so amazing to speak with you. I'm so honored that you joined me and shared all of your knowledge, because you are very knowledgeable and you bring up so many great points where I'm like, wait, do you have a psychology degree? And I just didn't know this. Or I'm being serious. Do you have one or no?
No, I actually
Okay.
studied political science and I wanted to work in government. But
Ah,
I think honestly that I've always been somebody who's obsessed with people's personal stories.
yeah.
And I think over almost 9 years, I talked to so many people who are either featured or who make stories about people. And I'm pretty intuitive, and I feel like I really try hard to understand someone's point of view. And I
Yeah.
understand that it's everyone's view is based on their family of origin, their
Mhm.
life experiences, their faith, their culture, where they work, the place that they live in. Like all these things factor. And that the more we talk to one another about our own ideologies, our own cultures, you realize that you don't have that much that's dissimilar. You actually have much in
Right.
common.
That's a great point. And I think if people could actually speak in a civil manner to one another when they disagree, I think you're right. They would find that they do have a lot more in common than they originally thought, because they're just too busy screaming at each other and calling each other
Or
names and not
also,
listening.
to your point, are you listening because you want to understand, or are you listening because you want to respond? And you really have to listen to understand.
That's so true, because so many times people are like, just shut up so I can say what I want to say,
Yeah.
and not even process what you're saying. I totally agree. Well, Kate, where can people find you if they want to find you, follow you, all of that?
So my podcast is called Reality Life with Kate Casey. It is available wherever you listen to podcasts. I have a YouTube as well. Also, I have a what to watch list where I tell you what to watch each week. And I give you like 8 things, and it's a great guide of what to watch and a great conversation starter with people in your life. Like, oh, we got to watch this. And you can get that at katecasey.substack.com. I've got bonus episodes on Patreon, and then Instagram at KKCCA, TikTok, it's KKC, Twitter and Threads, Blue Sky at KKC. I'm
Love
around.
it. Awesome. Well, I will include all of that, or your website, which houses all of that, in the episode notes. I so appreciate you, Kate. And
Thank
I
you for
hope
having me, Lauren. I
yeah,
appreciate it.
I hope you come back at some point so we can, and I'll have like something specific, one specific doc that we should talk about, because I really could talk to you about a million things. But
Well, your homework is to watch The Keepers. I think
okay.
that one in particular, my favorites are The Keepers and Wild Wild Country. That's a
Oh,
great
I saw
cult
that
doc.
was good. Yeah, yeah, I saw
That's
that
on
one.
Netflix.
Yeah.
But Murder on Middle Beach on HBO is really interesting for true crime.
Okay.
Oh, wait, one last one. Um, what is it called? It's the story of Emanuela, a girl who disappeared from Italy in the 1980s.
Oh,
Um, I'll send you the link to it.
is
But
it? She's not the Vatican girl,
the
is she?
Vatican Girl, thank you. It's the
That,
Vatican Girl. Did you
yeah.
watch that one?
Okay. Okay. No, I briefly, I kind of know the story. But because my friend, he has a podcast and he covered this case extensively, so I know a bit from what he covered, but I didn't know there was something out there about her. So that's interesting.
Vatican Girl is great. It's I think 3 episodes.
Oh.
And I think in the current Diddy times, an even more fascinating story. But listen, there are lots of links to all these stories.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm excited now. I have like so much to watch. I'm gonna move the Lindsay Lohan Netflix movie back a little bit and just pile
that
it back on. Okay, yeah.
Although you do need that sometimes to kind of like have a little break.
Trust me, I need it very badly, very badly. But no, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. And I hope you'll consider joining me again at some point.
I'd love to. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kate. Because of that 9-dash line. And Ted Cruz said, look, if you're not into geopolitics, you won't notice it. I mean, hello.